if you have no users, you really don't have a product.
So why don't we start with the day job? What do you do day to day, Eric?
Yeah, so I am a software engineering consultant. I work with a lot of companies all over the world to help build software that people love, that people enjoy using, that hopefully, and one of the main priorities is to help the business, whether that's within revenue or, some other metric that's measurable.
Okay, so are they customer facing products that you're building for companies or internal systems or mixture of both?
Yeah, so most of the products I work on are public facing, which is a whole different set of rules and guidelines than a lot of embedded or internal systems. So I started my career developing internal systems, and those internal systems were cool when I was working on them, but I always wanted someone to be able to look at the website or hop on their mobile app and be able to look and see what I work on. And I also wanted that pleasure of being able to be like, yeah, I'm working on this app here. Check it out, download it, go on the website, whatever that may be. And I couldn't get that fulfillment with my first career job. So I ended up switching over into a consulting company where we do a lot of public facing applications. So a lot of unique users and a lot of scalability and a lot of being able to say, this is the app I'm building.
Yeah, I can get the appeal of that. I remember in my career doing a lot of, should we say, business as usual systems that no
Hmm.
one outside the company is ever going to see, and then you talk to people about it and say, "Oh, what can I see that you've built?" Nothing.
Right.
No, you can't see it. It's this accounting system or whatever that's buried in the company, and two people use it. It's not that exciting.
Right. Right.
And then a bunch of other stuff I've done more recently has been kind of machine learning infrastructure for people, or data
Hmm.
engineering stuff. Again, it's not seen. So I really enjoyed when I moved to a company and I was customer facing, actually getting to talk to the customers. How do you feel about that?
How do I feel about the being
Yeah,
able
do you
to?
enjoy talking to customers, or do you get to do much of that?
Yeah, I do. Uh, so the customers I typically talk to, there's kind of 2 points in the customer. The one is the client in which you're building the software for, right? That is in one essence the customer, and then the other customer are the users that are going to be using the application. And I think both are extremely important when deciding how to build your software, right? The person who you're building the software for, they're the ones with the vision or creating or wanting something that's going to, propel their business domain. And then there's going to be the users who that first vision dies if the users don't know how to use the product or don't know how to, implement the strategy or whatever was trying to get created. So I personally love talking to the clients and talking to the users. I have a quote. I don't know if I invented it from a year of doing LinkedIn posts or not, but I say it all the time, and it's if you have no users, you really don't have a product. And I believe that as like in a way of are you creating software that's propelling the world that people are using, that people are enjoying to use, and if you're not hitting those kind of criterias, yeah, you have a product, but do you really kind of thing? So that's kind
Yeah,
of
until you've
where
got to
I
use
am.
it, it's an idea, isn't it?
Yeah, if you exactly. And I think that comes down to like the ideas are like a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. Everyone has an idea in software. And a lot of, the idea needing to come to life is execution. And then when you hit execution, are you getting people to actually use what you executed, right? And there's a whole nother like you can keep going down and being like, yeah, but like during the execution part, you're probably learning and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, to kind of reflect back to the first question, I really enjoy talking with users and the client to try and make their vision or strategy come to life.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. It's really satisfying, and if I look back on the beginning of my career, I'm quite surprised by that because I consider myself an introvert. When I
Mhm.
started my first business many years ago now, the idea of going out and selling to people was horrific. Talking to customers or talking to people and asking them to be customers, did not look forward to that. But it was one of those learning experiences that through going through the process, and I did a little bit of consulting as well before I started my own business, but getting more exposure to it, you realize they're just people. You just got to talk to them.
Yep.
You know, what is your problem? How can we help? And now enjoy it because you're actually talking to somebody and you get to feel that you're solving a useful problem for them. You're adding some value.
Yeah, and the longer you're in the field too, you realize how many problems there really are to be solved. Whether that's huge SaaS products like Salesforce, something that's like almost like multi-billion-dollar companies, or even micro SaaS products where you're just almost like a plug into some other giant application. Like there's a ton of micro SaaS products all over LinkedIn, whether that's like how to help create posts or how to structure posts, how to, all that kind of stuff, being able to see viral content and things like that. And each one has their own problem, and there's multiple solutions to those problems, and it just kind of keeps piling on each other. And it's really cool and interesting aspect.
So one of the things I found quite frustrating when I was doing software consultancy for other companies, I mean, like through some of the big consultancies, was we'd do a 6 month project and then we go, ta-da, here it is, bye, and we never see it again.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get to actually kind of see the journey after you've done the big launch or you've got something out there
Yeah,
and maybe
yeah.
support it, see how it evolves?
So I don't. I am the first one that you mentioned. So we have kind of two teams. There's a support team and there's a product development team. And I'm mostly on the product development. So that doesn't necessarily mean like once you release MVP, which is like iteration one, and it goes live and you're getting users, that there's not going to be MVP plus and so on and so forth. Right. But there's definitely a are we just going to be supporting the product afterwards and then continue talking to the users? I'll be usually switched from that product then. And I kind of look at it as good and bad, right? The good news is, hey, after I build this product, I can now jump on a new product that might have a completely different business domain problem that we're trying to solve. It's going to have different users. It's going to have different use cases. It could have different technologies, frameworks, libraries. It doesn't matter, right? Everything's always evolving. And you're going to be meeting new people from a new company, kind of learning their structure. Um, and then there's also like the other side of it where, you know, if you really love the product, you're going to be leaving it. But at the same time, if you really don't enjoy the product, you're also going to be leaving it. So there's always going to be a like something in the future, right?
Yeah, that was a great aspect that I enjoyed of that. As you say, every 3 to 6 months we moved to a different project,
Mm-hmm.
possibly a new tech stack, you bond a new bunch of people, a new domain. So for somebody that likes learning stuff, it was awesome. The thing that I missed out on, I realised a little bit after that, is that people that done that for 10 years, they never maintained anything. They never
Mm-hmm.
got to see what's it like actually having to support that project for the next 3 to 5 years. And
Yep.
that's a whole other bunch of career development that they missed out on. So I
Yeah,
was quite
absolutely.
glad when I did get the experience for that.
It's a whole different world, right? And I'd say my first well, when I was doing internal systems, that was more support, right? Because I joined a giant I'm going to call it legacy just because it was old, but application that needed support. It also needed new features, but you were kind of like a do everything team, right? Well, now I'm definitely more of feature development, mostly on the back end, um, but yeah, definitely feature, not support.
Cool. So I think you may have mentioned most on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed some of your YouTube videos, and I think some of the stuff that you've done on Udemy, which I'd love to dig into and hear a bit more about. They seem to be kind of more Python back end. I think Fast API
Mm-hmm.
I saw. How did you kind of transition from software engineer to having YouTube or Udemy? Which came first, and what did that journey look like?
Yeah, so I would say my journey is backwards compared to most. The
Okay.
reason I say that is I think most people, when they start, let's say, like they wanted to get into coaching, they want to get into like software coaching, or they want to get into course development, they start with social media, where whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, Instagram, YouTube, they're kind of going down that route. And I want to say I kind of did the opposite. And I think a big portion of it is my wife is a teacher. So like education is kind of like embedded in our like day to day lives. So right before like around COVID time, I wanted to try and get into course development. So I created a small Python course. Um, and then from there it was history because I started like now I'm starting to I don't like to say the word build an audience, but building almost like a community that enjoys Python, right? And since I started creating the community of Python, it was kind of just like natural route to kind of stay in the Python realm. Um, but I also do a little bit of Java, so I would say it's kind of like a duel of Java and Python.
Okay. So which came first, Udemy or YouTube? Which, I mean, I guess YouTube's more
Yeah,
of an audience, and Udemy's maybe more of the out and out teaching, should we say?
yeah. So for me, so which one was created first would have been my YouTube. But
Okay.
I created like two videos. So I had like a course in mind, and I started creating it on YouTube where I had someone tell me, "This is really good, but you could be selling it. You could be selling this instead of creating it." And I know that that's like, and I wanted to. I came into this to help people, but it got me kind of thinking of Udemy a little bit. And I was already an active Udemy student at the time, so I already knew of Udemy. Um, and I have a great friend who's also does Udemy content, and we kind of went down that road. And then as my Udemy started picking up, I had almost one-off questions, right? So if I created a course on how to do X, someone's going to ask me, well, how do I embed Y into X? Or how do I also, instead of using JWTs, how can I use Amazon's authentication platform instead? Something that did not fit necessarily in this course structure. So the course I was wanting to teach X, I'm not necessarily wanting to say like how to do every single dependency of that, right? And that's kind of where my YouTube journey started falling into place. It was like the one-off videos that may not fit into the course, but I had a community that were wanting it.
Are they fairly broad topics then? Not
No, they go from they get into pretty advanced. So if we wanted to like talk about like Fast API, so Fast API is probably my most popular one. Um, I potentially probably have the most like Fast API, one of the biggest Fast API communities probably like in the world due to it. But it really teaches the Python basics and then understanding what like API endpoints are, how we can create that into Fast API. Now we can go a little bit more advanced. We can kind of talk about background tasks, JWTs, how we can kind of create those full stack applications, how we're going to be able to make these scale, rate limiting, all that kind of stuff, which I think we start getting past the introduction standpoint. But it's all about one specific topic, right? And that is really like where my narrow is. So I don't know if generic in the case of just like how to transition to
I
software
think
development or more of like that kind of
yeah, I
world.
think I used the wrong word there. I was thinking in terms of niche. So I've seen a couple of people
Mm.
recently that may do a fast API with Python, and then as you say, when they've got the question of how do I do a fast API with Python and put a React front end on it and have JWTs, they've created another little half-hour course on that that's very, very niche and super specific.
Hmm.
That there might only be an audience of 500 people for, but they've built that little half an hour course.
Yes,
So
yes,
I was
yes.
meaning,
It's
have you gone quite that niche, or are they a bit broader?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I would say I'm slightly broader in Python. When it comes to the community that I've built, it is very niche though for Fast API. Like I don't skip a lot of Fast API content, whether that's like a new version or a new implementation. I usually cover it in some aspect, right? Um, but I don't just only do Fast API content, right? Because I think Fast API is a pretty niche in its own, where I would like to be more broad too and help as many people as possible while
Mm-hmm.
also being able to focus on that. And if that's like a funnel that kind of gets people into Fast API, that's fantastic, right? Like that's great for everybody involved. I love teaching it, and I do think it's a framework that's not going away anytime soon. But then there's also like the flip side of, well, there's also a large amount of people who are learning Python, but they also want to learn, Django or Flask or some other kind of web framework with Python. And I would not want to leave those individuals out if they're just wanting to learn Python.
Cool. So, did Udemy help you achieve your goals then in wanting to teach more people? I think when I looked at you had about 100,000 students. Is that the goal, or do you have a lofty goal of 1 million students or more?
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy. So I've been doing it for quite a few years now, at least in the education world. And my first goal was, and it's funny how your goals evolve, right? So I wasn't when I had the idea of doing videos, it was not, I want to have 1 million people and be able to quit my full-time job and just travel the world being a digital, a remote digital person. Like that was never my goal. My goal was I wanted to help people. And part of helping people, you have to look at what's not being covered. So at the time, I saw Fast API getting a lot of growth in like Stack Overflow's yearly reviews at the time. And I just saw like kind of like a major growth area in Python. And I knew Python was majorly popular. So I wanted to kind of dive into what is Fast API. So I really taught myself Fast API, built some products, and got to a point where I was fairly confident in teaching it. So I went down that road of, hey, I want to help as many people as possible, whether that's 50, because that's the most people I'm capable of helping, or more than that. I can tell you right now, 100,000 students was never on my radar, and I'm completely blessed to be able to say that. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it's quite amazing how much those goals change, isn't it? When I started coding challenges last year, my goal was 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
I hit that by the end of the first weekend.
Yeah, that's
And at
crazy.
that point, I had to, like, okay, maybe I'm thinking too small, that there's more people interested in this.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And that's kind of how I was. I was like, if I can get 100 people interested in the content, that'd be awesome. Because the courses, and it's not like it was like, I always knew I would be able to do social media in some aspect, because a lot of that, you're creating free content for free, almost like as free resources. Courses, when you're trying to monetize and sell, it's a whole different mind shift. And I did not know how well it would do. And for me to be like, I have 100,000 students on a payment platform is kind of crazy. I have more like, and like I said, I kind of did it opposite. I have more paying students than I have like free people on social media, right? And it's unique.
so I guess that most of those students then have come through Udemy's own marketplace. Then you're not driving the traffic to Udemy.
Yeah. So a lot of it was Udemy traffic. I have a really good friend who is also on Udemy, where we started building some courses together. But there has been a slight change where I've been driving more traffic than I did like 2 years ago, right? And Udemy is unique where if you want to do well on Udemy, you have to create a really good course, and you have to be like one of the top three in that niche. And if you're not, I mean, just like the average student, like if they're searching Python, they might look at the top like 3 or 4 courses and already have their answer to which one they want to proceed with. So it's kind of like a unique thing of, is your content you're creating, is it wanted, and are you going to be the best at it?
So what? I kind of don't know how to phrase this question, but what makes you the best at it? What makes a course stand out as being the best course on that subject? I kind of
Yeah.
want to
So
assume it's the content, but I think that
yeah,
might
yeah,
be a little bit
yes.
naive as well.
So there's kind of there might be more than two parts to it. So one is knowing how to create videos. And I don't create like what do they call it? Like entertain or
Edutainment.
educate, yeah, edutainment. Yeah, I don't create that kind of content typically. So I focus directly on education. So a lot of it comes down to, what are you teaching, and are you explaining it in such a way that individuals are able to learn? um so you have to be able to get your point across to someone who may not know what that is, because I mean that's what you're doing, you're teaching, right? The second one would be like, do you know how to make it look professional? Do you know how to sound professional? If you're going to be on screen, do you know lighting and all that kind of stuff? And each one of those are its own box of knowledge and editing and recording and all that kind of stuff. So to make a really good course, you have to you have to be passionate about what you're teaching, because you have to get to a standpoint, but you have to get to a spot where you know more than who you're trying to have take the course, but then also you care about the students in the community that's joining. Because if all you care about is selling and not about the journey or about the individuals, people will know. It's all about, authenticity, and are you who you say you are? Are you there for them? And a lot of people can see that.
Cool. So, um, in just a couple of minutes, what are the key things that you've learned, and how did you go about learning them about lighting and getting good quality audio and video?
Yeah, so that was a journey too. So I, for lighting, I watched a ton of YouTube. There was a document from Ali Abdal who created a step by step like bullet point list on how to do lighting, how to do audio, maybe the lighting you should purchase, the audio you should purchase, the camera you should purchase. Um, and I kind of just went with that. I didn't have anybody that knew too much about audio and lighting, and it was more of just like me figuring out from trial and error. And I think that goes with like a lot of just things in life, right? Whether that's lighting and recording, or if that's software, or just trying to get better at anything. It's all about just like trial and error and consistency, and just learning more about the failures. Like my first course or the first video I made is drastically different than my now video, right? And a lot of that is just from consistently doing it, just about every single day for the last like 5 or 6 years. And then that's really how you just kind of, and then you just kind of pile it on, right?
Yeah, it's a big investment though, isn't it? Because cameras and decent microphones and audio interface and all that, it adds up quite quickly.
Yeah, there is, and I saw this from I think his name's MKB on YouTube,
Okay.
Marcus, and he always said it's harder for a solo, YouTuber or a video creator than it is for a team. And the reason being, you have to be almost an expert in the domain and everything. As you get bigger, you have people that know lighting, you have people that know recording, people that know editing. But when you're starting, you have to figure that out all on your own. And it kind of goes back to like LinkedIn. If you want to get on LinkedIn, you have to learn about the LinkedIn platform. You have to learn about LinkedIn hooks. So what do people want to consume? Are you checking your impressions, your engagement? Are you looking at all the analytics that matter? Are you creating a plan that, moves the needle, instead of just like saying what's on your mind all the time and maybe not getting engagement from that? And that's one platform. And then there's like YouTube, which is a different platform, and Udemy, which is a different platform, and just all this different kind of stuff that you have to become somewhat of an expert in, because there is going to be an expert in that field that is analyzing all that stuff. And if you're not doing that, then it's going to be extremely hard to be competitive in that field.
Cool. So, without going into too many details, do you feel that your investment has paid off? Have you got out of it what you hoped?
Yeah. So like we were saying, my original goal was much smaller, right? And as the goal has gotten bigger, the investment has also got bigger, not just with time, but also with cost. Um, so like the gear I use now for everything is definitely not the gear I was using 6 years ago. And it's funny how that evolves. And then also there's the standpoint of like investment from a time perspective. If you would have asked me my first 2 years into it, I probably would have said no, it has not paid off. And the reason being was I was learning about a lot of stuff that I didn't know how to. I don't want to say monetize, but I didn't know how to get any further in it. Like you spend so much time learning about lights, you learn so much about audio, but again, if it comes back to, if you have no users, do you really have a product, right? And you're learning about all this stuff, which I don't want to say is not knowledge that won't you won't use later on in life. But at the same time, there is a possibility you won't use it on in life, right? I have a giant key light and stuff that like I would never use anywhere else. And it would, if it wasn't for this stuff, I'd probably be sitting in the basement, and my wife would be like, "Why do we have this giant light down here?" So I think that's where I am. But yes, overall, it's definitely paid off.
Cool. So now you're moving the other way, and you've placed a great emphasis on LinkedIn. So you've moved from video to writing. I guess, opposite way to me. I started off writing and have
Mhm.
moved to now doing a podcast and a few other things. How are you finding the transition to writing? Is it back to square one, or are there transferable skills that you've come across?
That's an interesting question. So it's some of the skills can be transferred, some cannot. And I'm going to say the ones that can be transferred is being yourself. When you're on camera, people know extremely fast in like our current modern day if you want to be there, if you care, um, if you're authentic. Is this really Eric, right? And I think when most try and get into building a community, they look at what others are doing, but instead of adding their own individual twist to it, they try and copy what is working. And whether that's, you're trying to create a YouTube channel and your favorite channel is Mr. Beast, so you're kind of copying what they do or what they say, or you're trying to be, on LinkedIn and you are trying to gain a community on finance, let's say. But you're following all these financial advisors and you're just kind of like saying what they say. That may work for a very small amount of time, but eventually you have to be unique. You have to be yourself, right? You have to be authentic. And I think that creating videos in the beginning, video creation, if for someone who's never done it, it is a challenge. It anything that you had that you're trying to hide or anything is on full blast. And I think that carried over to writing, where I was just writing from my point of view. I was writing from, Eric. And I think that's different than a lot of people, or a lot of individuals who want to get into video or writing. I already went through the whole not being myself before on video, and people can see right through it. So I started off in writing the same way, just being me, being authentic.
Cool. I think that's a great approach. I can imagine it's got some other transferable skills as I think about it. As I've done a couple of podcast recordings with people I know quite well, and I've maybe not seen them in a situation that's a bit different like this. And what I've noticed is they're maybe not as comfortable in front of the camera, not as comfortable chatting knowing they're being recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And I suspect they're like this in interviews, knowing a few of them well. Do you think that, again, all this experience has helped with interviews or will help with interviews if you come to look for a job again in the future?
So that's a great question. So, for example, like I'm going to say yes, it does help. But then there's also the part of you're still human, right? Like, for example, like we've said, I have a ton of videos on Udemy. I have quite a few videos on YouTube. I post on LinkedIn every day. If you combined all the individuals or all the minutes watched, I forget. It was an absurd amount of number of minutes watched of me just talking, right? And we've talked before, right? This isn't our first time talking.
Yep.
And I was still slightly like nervous getting on a podcast. And so it's a unique in a standpoint of like I'll record myself and I'll post it. I will write, I'll post it. I put myself in a lot of vulnerable places, and I think that's like another whole ball game of making stuff public is you're making yourself vulnerable. And now I'm hopping on our second time speaking, and I was nervous. Like I was nervous, and it was just and I think I'm not interviewing right now, but I would assume if I went into an interview, I would also just be nervous, but I would still be me, right? And I think that's like another thing. You still have to be authentic. You still have to be your individual, and I think it's okay to be nervous. But I would say it probably does help a little bit. Like I'm looking at myself in my little like corner right now, and this feels normal, just seeing myself talk. But there's also the part of me where it's like Like you're constantly telling yourself you don't want to sound dumb, you don't want to twist up your words, all this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And that's
But
hard to
that's
escape if you're
just,
still being human.
yeah, exactly. That's being human, isn't it? It's that we all feel that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
I mean, as you're saying that, I was thinking I've done hundreds of interviews as a contractor and a permit roles
Hmm.
over the last 30 years. I've interviewed lots of people to join my team. I still feel nervous in some of them, and it's. I think there's always going to be that element of that. You're talking to somebody that you don't know. It
Yep.
is a little bit of weird dynamic in that they are there to judge you, or you're there to judge the other person if you're conducting the
Hmm.
interview. It's not really normal, is it? We don't wander up to people and have a chat on the street, or meet friends at a bar and start asking them questions with the intent of judging them. It would just feel very weird.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a. I've been on like I've done a lot of interviews, um, and that's one of the first things I try and do when conducting an interview is I always give a second, for them to take the deep breath, saying that like I'm also just here to talk, just be you. I'm gonna be me. Instead of like the opposite of coming in with a list of questions and trying to analyze their coding ability within the first 5 minutes and try and make a yes or no decision immediately, and then the other 55 minutes are just kind of hanging out, like already have it with a solution already set. I try and do the opposite. I try and be human first, and I think I in this quality I try and also reflect in my like LinkedIn posts and things like that of I learn more about an individual when I can be calm and also they can be calm, and we can kind of discuss who they are, what they've built, and then based on what the person interviewing says, then you can kind of ask questions on that, and you can quickly find if an individual um, is going to be meeting a lot of the criterias.
And it's a much nicer way because you're looking for ways for them to win. You're looking for ways for them to give the evidence that
Hmm.
they have the skills or the experience that you need. And it can be a nice, fun conversation that way, which is much nicer than the "Have you done this? Tell us about the time when you did this.
Yep.
What's your 5 year?" And they're not even sound nice as I just kind of rattle them off and critique them.
Yep.
Cool. And so, as well as LinkedIn, you've also expanded into a newsletter recently.
Yeah, yeah. So I've done a newsletter a little bit. I'm still figuring it out if it's me, if it's for me. And a lot of the things that I have been trying to do is so I think it'd be better explained if I kind of talk about last year. So at the end of last year, I was trying to get into everything. So I was like trying to do LinkedIn, I was trying to do Twitter, I was trying to do YouTube, I was dabbling in Instagram, I was trying to do course content. And what I realized quickly was one, I wasn't enjoying trying to scale everywhere. Um, and then two, I was doing a lot of things mediocre. And when you're competing with people who that's their main platform. So if you're trying to scale everywhere, there's still going to be people where that's their main platform. And I thought I didn't want to trying to compete with those people and be mediocre because I'm also trying to build like a community, right? And I didn't want to just, throw content around trying to almost make noise without trying to deliver what I'm trying to deliver. So I am getting into a newsletter. The newsletter is more generic content, more generic topics that kind of just as a way to express maybe more details on what I'm sharing on LinkedIn. So there, so I think my latest newsletter was like people that I've met in my tech journey of transitioning into LinkedIn, where you're mentioned and a couple others. And then I've also kind of dabbled into some junior programming ideas of like clean code and how to name variables professionally and things like that. So I'm kind of dabbling in different areas where it's just almost like a way for me to like journal, a way for me to be able to communicate what's on my mind to be able to teach during it.
That's funnily enough how my second newsletter started. I
Yeah.
wanted to like longer form than fits on LinkedIn. My main newsletter of coding challenges is very targeted on the coding challenges. I wanted something else that I could explore. and I
Hmm.
like the longer pieces. So that's how my second one came about.
Perfect. Yeah.
Cool. So with all these different platforms you got to be helping people, is there any generic advice you'd give for somebody that's early in their career, coming into the industry, or maybe looking for their second job at the moment? What pearls of wisdom would you share with them?
So for someone trying to get into like content creation, or for someone that's trying to like get a new job,
Move into software development or move into their second job in software development?
yeah. So my advice to anyone who's trying to get into software development or looking for a new role would be to follow your passion. And the reason I say that, and tech's unique. I would say a lot of people would say following your passion is bad advice, and depending on where you are. But tech is so broad, and to one get into tech, you have to have a passion for tech. It's I think there was some myths floating around a couple years ago how you can go from like never knowing how to do tech to probably getting like your first 100,000 USD job in just a few months, and that is 100% a myth in my eyes. I'm sure someone's done it, right, and that's where we're capitalizing on that thought process. But a lot of tech in general is coming from, you have a passion for tech, you have a passion for creativity and creating software, and you have a passion for helping others, because at the end of the day you're creating software for others to use. Or that's, you might not be talking to the user, you might not be talking to the client, but every single person enjoys when more people are using their application, because you're trying to help accelerate whether something in someone's life, right? And I would say follow your passion, because there's so many different areas of tech. I know that there's a lot of nerves right now in just the world alone, let alone tech, due to generative AI and different areas of tech that no one really, that the average person in tech doesn't even understand, let alone individuals that aren't in tech. Um, so my thing would be like not to get down by that. If you're in college right now or university and you're trying to get into computer science and you see like, hey, Gen AI can create something in 45 seconds that might take me a day to do. Don't get discouraged by that. I don't think it's going to be replacing anybody's jobs in the near future, at least when it comes to software. It's going to be a tool that people are going to be utilizing. So don't get discouraged. Follow whatever intrigues you, whether that's mobile development, web development, machine learning, AI, Internet of Things. I mean, there's so many different areas. Just chase that, and if you work at it every day and you're consistent, I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And adding on to that, 10, 15 years ago, we didn't have data science, we didn't have data engineer, we didn't have machine learning engineer, we didn't have SRE. Maybe we just started talking about DevOps. So all these things are fairly new and are kind
Mm-hmm.
of now career paths that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. There are people talking about prompt engineer and various other things now, so ML ops.
Yep.
So who knows what expansion we'll have, and the demand for software engineers is predicted to hit 40 million by 2030, if I remember rightly, and go on beyond that. So, we've grown from about 2 million in the mid 90s when I started my career to
Mm-hmm.
27 million at the moment, predicted to grow to 40 million. Even if AI comes in and takes some of those jobs, the demand is far outstripping what AI will be able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Nope.
as
I
you
agree
say, I think
completely.
it'll be a tool. We've had at least 5 times in my lifetime we've had AI is going to replace software engineers in the next few years, and it hasn't happened yet. I mean, I'm sure we're getting closer, but there's also a lot more specialist knowledge that we need. There's a lot more to do, and there's always that issue of, yeah, AI can produce some code, but you've got to tell it what to do, and that still involves talking to the user, getting their requirements, and writing them out in a way that the AI can understand and build the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, you're just changing that. At best, if AI suddenly works, we'll stop writing C or C sharp or Python, and we'll write code in English instead. We're still going to have to be very precise, and still
Yep.
going to have to tell the AI what to do.
Yep. Exactly.
Cool. Anything else you'd like to add for the Coding Chat's audience?
Yeah. Yeah, I would just say if you're, coding challenges was a great idea. If you are, following along with John's newsletter and how to create products using coding challenges, stay with it. It is extremely unique. They're not just like to-do projects, right? And I think that's why I think that's, a huge applause to what John's creating over there. And I know every time someone reaches out to me about products that they should build, how do they find products they can build? How do they create products that are unique? I always refer them to the coding challenges. So
Cool.
if you're,
Thank you, Eric.
yeah, no problem. So if you are a student of John's, you're in a good spot. So stay with it.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. And Eric, where can people find you? How, LinkedIn, YouTube, Udemy? What's the best place to find you?
Yeah. So LinkedIn's probably the best one. LinkedIn's probably the best spot to find me if you're wanting me to to respond, just because it's more text based. Um, so if you want to find me, a lot of my stuff is coding with Roby. That's kind of the domain of everything of me, Eric Roby. So I'm Eric Roby. The bigger domain is coding with Roby. So all handles are coding with Roby, whether that's LinkedIn, YouTube, Udemy. A lot of it's under coding with Roby. So if you're looking to learn about a specific technology or dive deeper, come check it out.
Awesome. And we'll get all the links and put them in the show notes.
Sweet.
Thank you very much, Eric.